I mean, I remember reading something about it in USA Today that said, you know, Pretty Woman came out this weekend and made this much money, and I thought, is that a lot of money? Is that good? Is that great? I didn't really know.
She turned down $25 million. Then she turned down $30 million. Then she stopped taking the calls entirely. And for years, the industry that had made her a legend told itself a comfortable story. Julia Roberts had lost her nerve, lost her relevance, lost the thread. What nobody considered. What Hollywood is structurally incapable of considering, is that she might have known exactly what she was doing. This is the story of the most deliberate disappearance in modern cinema. And it begins not with a breakdown, but with a photograph. In 1990, Julia Roberts was 22 years old when Pretty Woman grossed $463 million against a $14 million budget. Within a year, her face was architecture, something people built their expectations around. Studios didn't just want her in their films. They wrote her laugh into contracts and counted her smiles per scene. Marketing executives would screen rough cuts and flag sequences where she didn't grin enough. Reshoots were ordered, a human being, reduced to a unit of warmth. The trap, as Julia would later understand it, was elegant. The title America's Sweetheart sounds like a coronation. It is, in practice, a cage built from rose petals. Every script that arrived on her desk after Pretty Woman was a variation of the same character. A woman who needed rescuing. A woman whose purpose was to reflect the light of someone else's story. The formula printed money. So the industry kept serving it to her and kept calling it opportunity. What they never acknowledged was the audacity of what Julia was quietly attempting and quietly losing. She lobbied hard for the silence of the lambs, the role of Clarice Starling, methodical and haunted, tracking evil through fluorescent corridors. That was the work she wanted. The studio passed. She wanted either lead in Thelma and Louise. Too likable, she was told, too safe for the audience to watch her run. Basic instinct? Absolutely not. Every door to serious acting was closing because one door to romantic comedies had opened too wide, and the draft from it was impossible to escape. By 2000, she became the first woman to earn $20 million for a single film. Erin Brockovich. Peak earning power, peak fame, the top of every measure Hollywood cares about. She also began having panic attacks before press tours, locking herself in hotel bathrooms to cry before assembling the smile the audience paid to see. Her therapist, she would later say, told her something that lodged itself like a splinter. You are living for everyone except yourself. And eventually, that kills you. The fracture that people saw, the one the tabloids called difficult behavior, began on the set of Closer in 2004. A male co-star, whom Julia has declined to name directly, talked over her in rehearsals and treated her like furniture rather than a fellow actor. She went to director Mike Nichols. She said, "Handle this, or I'm done." Nichols backed her. The press reported that Julia Roberts was a problem. The unnamed co-star was praised for his intensity. That double standard broke something open in her. Not destroyed it, but clarified it. The game was not merely rigged. The rigging was invisible to everyone except the person it was rigging against. The same year, on Ocean S-12, she found herself once again the only woman in a large ensemble, her character written as the punchline of a joke about her own appearance. She refused the scene. Steven Soderbergh rewrote her arc, but Julia left the production, knowing she would never again accept an ensemble role, where she was the sole woman handed all the decorative lines and none of the architecture. Meanwhile, the tabloids were doing their own accounting. Her relationship with Benjamin Bratt had ended in 2001. Too successful to love. One magazine headline read. Another ran a cover poll asking readers whether she was evil for the circumstances of her falling in love with Danny Motter, a cinematographer she had met on the set of The Mexican. He was married when they met. When he left his wife and Julia married him, the media crucifixion was total and immediate. Here is what Julia did in response to the crucifixion. She married him anyway. A ceremony in New Mexico, fewer than 30 people, no magazine deal, no exclusive photographs. Her publicist begged for damage control. Julia fired her publicist. She chose the person over the perception, and Hollywood, which speaks fluently in the language of perception, couldn't parse what that meant. The offer came shortly after. The lead in the Charlie's Angels sequel, $25 million. Her agent came back with $27 million when she declined. Julia said no again. When her agent finally understood she wasn't negotiating, he told her she was committing career suicide. Her response, by now famous to anyone who has spoken to people close to her, was 4 words: good. Let it end. It did end. It transformed. From 1990 to 2004, Julia averaged 3 films per year. From 2005 to 2009, she made 3 films total. Trade publications ran post-mortems. Career analysts used her name as a cautionary tale for young actresses. This is what happens when you turn down work. What Julia was actually doing during those years was farming organic vegetables on a ranch in Taos, New Mexico, raising twins Hazel and Phineas, born November 2004, and later a son, Henry, born June 2007. She changed diapers. She missed the Oscars, sometimes for her own film's promotional campaigns. She skipped the industry parties that are, in Hollywood, less parties than they are survival rituals. A friend of the couple has said that Danny told Julia early in their marriage, "Let them forget you. We'll remember who you are." It is perhaps the most anti-Hollywood sentence ever uttered in a Hollywood marriage. And it lasted. Her return was not a comeback. It was a renegotiation. Eat, Pray, Love in 2010, for half her former rate, but with creative control written into the contract. August, Osage County in 2013, opposite Meryl Streep. No glamour, no designer dresses, no smile, just raw and present and devastating. Her first Oscar nomination in 13 years, and something quieter than vindication. Proof that she had not lost her instrument. She had simply put it down when she needed to, and it was still there when she picked it back up. When she spoke about the pay gap, publicly acknowledging that on Ocean S11 she had been paid $5 million, while George Clooney earned $15 million for the same film. She was not performing outrage. She was describing arithmetic. America's most bankable female star paid 1/3 of her male co-star's rate. The revelation radicalized her in her 50s. She began negotiating not just for herself, but as an act of architecture for the women coming behind her. Ticket to Paradise in 2022. Equal pay. $15 million each, secured when both she and Clooney made clear they would walk if the studio hesitated. The film made $168 million worldwide. The industry that had written her off as past her prime-watched audiences show up in significant numbers for a woman who only appears when she has something she actually wants to do. Scarcity had made her more valuable, not less. In a recent interview, Julia said something that holds the whole story in a single image. In 2004, she looked at a magazine cover. Promotional, forgettable, some project she can no longer name, and didn't recognize the person behind the eyes. Not because of the makeup or the Photoshop. She didn't recognize what was missing from the person looking back at her. The real Julia had been performing so long that she had become invisible inside her own face. That frightened her more than any bad review, more than any box office number, more than any amount of money she might leave on the table. She has not had a panic attack since 2006. 18 years, she sleeps through the night. She can look at photographs of herself and find herself in them. Netflix offered $30 million for a limited series requiring 8 months of filming. She declined without deliberation. Her kids are teenagers. She gets this time with them once. No number is worth the arithmetic of absence. Her net worth sits at roughly $250 million, more than at her commercial peak, despite working a fraction as much. It turns out that choosing carefully makes you more significant when you do appear, not less. The industry still doesn't quite understand this. It measures in could-haves and should-haves in films not made and awards not campaigned for. Julia measures differently now. "I lived my prime years," she has said. You just didn't see it on camera. The universal lie sold to ambitious women is that you can have everything simultaneously. That life is a table large enough to hold all of it at once. Julia Roberts tried to seat everyone at that table. It nearly broke her. Her radical, unglamorous, quietly subversive discovery was something different. You can have everything you want, just not all at the same time. And knowing which season you re-in, knowing when to work and when to disappear, when to perform and when to simply live. That is not failure. That is the hardest form of wisdom there is. Most people never find it. Julia found it at 37 and spent the next 20 years refusing to lose it again.